I found out my family had a whole vacation home they kept secret from me. When I confronted them, they told me I was just the afterthought. I smiled, left without a word, and years later, I made sure they lost everything they thought was safe. I'll never forget the first time I realized something was wrong. It was late October, one of those chilly afternoons where the sun feels tired, already sinking low by 4 p.m. I just finished helping my dad move some boxes into his truck, old tools, broken garden equipment, the kind of junk he always said he'd fix but never did. I was wearing an old army jacket that still smelled faintly of mothballs, and the wind kept slipping through the ripped cuffs. He tossed me the keys with a grunt. "Go grab the paperwork folder off the passenger seat," he said, waving me toward the truck. I went, grumbling to myself. Inside the cab, the smell of gas station coffee and motor oil hit me in the face. I spotted the folder easily enough, thick, battered, with loose papers poking out at odd angles. As I scooped it up, one sheet fluttered loose and landed face up on the floor mat. It wasn't anything major looking, just an envelope from some county records office 2 states away. Curious, I picked it up. Property tax notice, Shady Pines County, Lakeview cabin. My heart gave a strange little lurch. I blinked, rereading it. A cabin? In Lakeview? My family didn't own any cabin, or so I thought. I'd grown up in a cramped 2-bedroom house with peeling paint and a sagging porch. My parents always said vacations were for people who didn't know the value of hard work. I flipped the envelope over. The name was unmistakably my father's. The property value listed wasn't chump change either, it was worth more than everything we owned, combined. When I walked back to the driveway, holding the folder and the slip in one hand, my fingers were cold, but not from the weather. I handed the folder to my dad, and, trying to sound casual, asked, "Hey, what's this about a cabin?" For a second, just a flicker, his face changed. Like someone had yanked down the curtain on a play and he wasn't ready. Then, just as fast, he barked a short laugh. "Old paperwork. You don't need to worry about it," he said, slamming the folder into the truck bed. "It's nothing." "Nothing?" I said, frowning. "It's a property tax bill." He shrugged, already turning back toward the garage. "Just some family business. Don't stick your nose where it doesn't belong." His tone wasn't angry. It was dismissive. Like he was brushing lint off his shirt. Something coiled inside me, something tight and sour. I'd always known I was the odd one out in my family. The quiet kid. The one who didn't get invited to poker nights or shopping trips or spontaneous cookouts. But this felt different. Bigger. I stood there for a long moment, the receipt crumpling slowly in my jacket pocket where I'd hidden it. Inside the garage, my dad started the leaf blower, the roar drowning out the quiet. I turned and walked home, my boots scraping against the gravel, heart heavier with every step. That night, lying awake in my room, staring at the cracked ceiling, I couldn't stop thinking about it. A cabin. A whole life I wasn't even part of. A secret big enough they didn't even bother to lie properly about it. I didn't sleep much. But I decided one thing. Next time they disappeared for the weekend, I'd find out exactly what family business meant. It didn't take long for the next weekend getaway to happen. 3 weeks after Thanksgiving, on a gray Friday morning, Mom casually mentioned that they might be running some errands out of town. No real details. No invitation. Just the usual assumptions that I'd be busy or wouldn't fit in. I waited 30 minutes after they left. Then I grabbed my jacket, a heavy brown leather one I hadn't worn in years, and slid into my beat-up sedan. No GPS. No plan. Just the address I'd memorized from that tax receipt. The drive took almost 3 hours, winding backroads lined with bare, winter-bitten trees. As I turned onto Lakeview Road, my tires kicked up loose gravel, and the woods thickened around me. And there it was. The cabin. Low-slung, cozy, with warm yellow light spilling from the windows. Smoke curling up from the chimney into the bruised gray sky. Dad's truck was parked in front. My sister's blue SUV beside it. Even my 2 cousins' cars. I pulled off the road a ways down and sat watching. Inside the cabin, I could see them laughing, moving around a big living room with a roaring fire. Mom wore a ridiculous reindeer sweater. Dad held a beer in one hand, poking at the fire with the other. My sister and cousins lounged on the couches, passing mugs of cocoa. The sort of scene you think only happens in commercials. I wasn't there. Not an empty chair. Not a pause where my name might have been said. Just pure, effortless exclusion. I should have left then. Instead, my boots crunched over frozen leaves as I crept closer, hiding behind a thick oak at the clearing's edge. That's when I heard them. "He'd just mope around anyway," my sister said, loud and easy. "You know how he gets," my cousin chimed in, laughing. Mom's voice joined in lightly, "Probably better this way." "He never really fit, did he?" Dad made a low grunt of agreement. I stood frozen behind that tree, fists jammed deep into my jacket pockets. There was no hesitation in their voices. No guilt. No sense that anyone was missing. It wasn't anger that filled me, it was something colder. Deeper. I straightened up and walked onto the porch. Through the window, Dad caught sight of me first. His expression didn't change. Just a slight tightening around the mouth, as if I were a mild inconvenience. Mom appeared behind him, pulling her sweater sleeves down nervously. My sister set down her mug with a faint, theatrical sigh. I knocked sharply, 3 quick raps. Dad opened the door only halfway, leaning against the frame like a bouncer deciding whether to let me in. "Hey," I said, my voice low and even. "Nice place." For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Mom said brightly, "We didn't think you'd be interested." Dad chuckled under his breath. "Yeah. You always hated camping." "This isn't camping," I said. "This is a whole life." They exchanged a glance. That unspoken conversation that says more than words ever could. And then my sister, smiling sweetly, said with a shrug, "You weren't really part of the plan. You always made things heavier." I looked at all of them, faces I'd grown up with, and realized I didn't recognize them at all. I smiled. The real kind. Then I turned and walked back into the dark, the cabin door closing behind me like a final, heavy period at the end of a chapter. And I didn't look back. The night swallowed me whole as I walked back to my car. No porch lights guiding the way, no voices calling me back. Just the crackling crunch of dead leaves under my boots and the distant, muffled laughter I left behind. I zipped my leather jacket up to my throat, though it did little to cut the cold. When I slid behind the wheel, I didn't start the engine right away. I sat there, staring blankly at the steering wheel, breathing slow, measured breaths until the trembling in my hands stopped. I wasn't surprised. Not really. It felt less like discovering something new and more like confirming what I already knew deep down. I just never let myself believe it before. I turned the key, headlights cutting through the mist, and pulled away from the clearing. The drive back home was long and silent. I didn't turn on the radio. Didn't check my phone. Didn't rehearse arguments in my head. There was nothing left to say. At a rundown gas station off the interstate, I pulled in under the sickly glow of a flickering sign. Inside, the cashier barely looked up as I bought a burner phone and a packet of scratchy postcards. I sat in my car afterward, shivering despite the heater, scribbling short, blunt messages onto each card. "Don't call. Don't visit. We are done. One for Mom. One for Dad. One for my sister. One each for my cousins." I shoved them into the grimy metal mailbox by the door and drove off without looking back. At home, I blocked every family contact on my phone, numbers, emails, social media. I even deleted old voicemails and pictures that suddenly felt like relics from a different life. When I was done, I tossed the phone in a drawer and closed it firmly. The silence afterward was so deep it pressed against my eardrums. I stood alone in the center of my small apartment, a worn couch, scuffed floors, chipped countertops, and felt a strange lightness settle over me. They would probably joke about it. Dismiss me as dramatic. Reframe the story to make themselves the victims of my overreaction. Let them. Because for the first time, I didn't care how they explained my absence. It was theirs to fill, not mine to justify. The next days blurred together in soft, strange peace. Morning coffee on the balcony, watching the city wake. Evening walks through half-lit streets where nobody knew my name. No texts reminding me of birthdays I wasn't invited to. No guilt-tripped phone calls hinting I needed to try harder to be part of the family. Just space. Wide, clean, empty space where Shane used to live. At night, lying on my second-hand couch with a thrifted blanket pulled over me, I realized something simple and devastating. I never had a place at their table. I was just filling a chair they never intended to set. And the worst part wasn't losing them. It was knowing they hadn't lost anything at all. Still, there was no grief. Just the quiet, growing seed of something harder. Sharper. Resolve. They thought they had closed the book on me. But they didn't realize. I was just starting to write a story of my own. And the best revenge stories, I decided that night, aren't rushed. They are patient. Precise. Icy cold. I closed my eyes, listening to the hum of the city beyond my cracked windowpane. Tomorrow, I would begin. But tonight, I allowed myself one small, ruthless promise. They would remember me. Life after them wasn't glamorous. There were no grand triumphs. No inspirational montages. Just slow, hard days. The kind where you wake up and have to remind yourself that you're not the person they told you were. I moved apartments, a cheap but clean one-bedroom closer to downtown. New number, no forwarding address. Even the landlord only knew me as M. Owens. No first name. Work became my refuge. I started picking up extra shifts at the auto shop, saving every dime. I took night classes, learned about property law, real estate loopholes, investment basics, all the boring, tedious things my family laughed off as nerd stuff when I was younger. Fine. Let them laugh. I smiled when I saw their smiling family photos pop up on old acquaintances' feeds, all gathered at the cabin, drinks in hand, sunsets behind them. Birthdays. Holidays. New Year's Eve parties. Every occasion was celebrated at that damn cabin. Always without me. Good. Let them get comfortable. Over 2 years, I built myself up quietly, brick by steady brick. Side gigs, odd jobs, a few lucky flips on cheap properties. The money started stacking slowly, then faster. Meanwhile, I kept my ear to the ground. I found out little things. Like how the land surrounding the cabin, all that pristine forest they loved, wasn't protected. It was privately owned. By an aging couple who lived states away and wanted to sell. Cheaply. The cabin itself was boxed in on a thin access road, barely wide enough for 2 trucks to pass. That road, I discovered, wasn't public property. It was an easement permission, not a right. It didn't take a genius to see the opportunity. All it would take was buying the surrounding land and shutting down the road legally. The idea took root quietly. No fireworks. No plotting boards with red string. Just quiet resolve. I approached the elderly couple through a third party. An investment firm. Anonymous. They accepted the offer within a month. And just like that, without ever hearing my voice, I became the sole owner of every acre surrounding the precious cabin. The legal steps to close the road took a little longer, nearly a year. I played it by the book, filing every paper, attending every hearing, smiling politely at every county clerk. No drama. No alarms. By the time my family received the official notice that access to their beloved cabin would be revoked permanently in 90 days, it was too late to fight. Their retreat became an isolated, useless shell overnight. They couldn't drive to it. They couldn't rent it out. They couldn't even legally walk the old trail without trespassing. I didn't gloat. Didn't post about it. Didn't even whisper it to anyone. It wasn't about humiliation. It was about truth. A truth they had spent their lives ignoring. I was never their afterthought. I was their consequence. And consequences, once they find you, don't nod politely. They break the door down. It started small. A voicemail from a number I didn't recognize, my father's voice, strained and uncertain. Hey, call us back when you get this. It's important. I deleted it without listening to the end. Then a text from my sister. Can we talk? It's about the cabin. I left it on read. By the end of the week, I was getting calls from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. Suddenly, everyone was very concerned. Very sorry. Very eager to reconnect. Funny how quickly family remembers you when their comfort is threatened. Through quiet sources, a mutual acquaintance here, a local real estate agent there, I learned the truth. The cabin was useless without access. Worse, they had poured money into renovations, planning to rent it out as a vacation property. New roof, updated kitchen, fancy furniture bought on credit. Debt they couldn't cover now. Without renters, without buyers, the property value plummeted overnight. Worse still, the landlocked location meant the county wouldn't help them. Their prized possession was officially a stranded ship. They tried to fight it, of course. Petitions. Phone calls to the county office. Even a lawyer, a cheap one. But the documents were airtight. When that failed, they turned to guilt. I started getting letters. Actual letters, as if handwriting "we miss you" would soften the blow they had delivered years earlier. Some were passive-aggressive masterpieces. We all make mistakes in families. Time heals. You should see the cabin now, it's even better than before. We could all be happy again. Your mother cries every night. Please don't punish her for the past. I framed the first one and hung it in my kitchen as a joke. Because here's the thing. They still didn't understand. It wasn't anger driving me. It wasn't revenge. It was silence. The same silence they had handed me on that porch when they looked right through me. I just returned it, wrapped neatly with a bow. By spring, they put the cabin up for sale at a rock-bottom price, desperate to get anything back. Nobody wanted it. Without legal road access, it might as well have been a shack on the moon. I heard through a neighbor that my father had started drinking more. That my mother stopped hosting her precious garden parties. That my sister's SUV, the shiny blue one, got repossessed quietly in the middle of the night. Still, they didn't know it was me behind it all. they thought it was bad luck. An unfair system. A random, cruel twist of fate. Because narcissists never believe that consequences are born from seeds they planted themselves. One evening, as rain tapped against my apartment windows, I sat sipping black coffee and scrolling past an online auction listing. Secluded cabin, needs access. Motivated seller. Their old dream, stripped bare. Priced like junk. I almost felt sorry for them. Almost. But pity is just another way of putting someone above you. And I wasn't beneath them anymore. They were strangers to me now. Ghosts wearing faces I used to know. And ghosts can haunt themselves just fine without my help. It happened on a Sunday afternoon. The sky was low and gray, the kind of day where even the birds seemed too tired to sing. I was home, sipping tea by the window, when there was a knock at the door. Not the frantic kind. Not the angry, pounding fists you might expect. No, it was polite. Hesitant. I knew before I even got up who it was. When I opened the door, I found them standing there. My mother, clutching her purse with white-knuckled hands. My father, smaller than I remembered, jacket hanging loose from his shoulders. And behind them, my sister, arms folded tight, her mouth pressed into a stubborn line. None of them spoke at first. It was my mother who finally found her voice. "Sweetheart," she said, her eyes already shining with tears. "We didn't know, we didn't realize." She trailed off when I said nothing. Dad cleared his throat, glancing down at his scuffed boots. "We made mistakes," he said gruffly. "But family forgives." Behind him, my sister's mouth twisted into something between a grimace and a pout. It was almost funny. All those years, they'd made me feel like the outsider. The burden. The extra piece no one asked for. And now here they were, standing on my doorstep like kids called into the principal's office. I leaned casually against the doorframe, crossing my arms. "You need something?" I asked. Mom's face crumpled. "We're losing everything," she whispered. "The cabin, the loans, your father's retirement. We can't." Her voice cracked. "We can't fix it without help." I let the silence stretch. It wasn't cruel. It was clean. It was necessary. Dad finally lifted his head, meeting my eyes with a flicker of the old defiance. "You owe us," he said, voice low. "We raised you. We made you who you are." I laughed. Actually laughed, right there in the doorway. "You didn't raise me," I said, voice calm. "You tolerated me." Dad flushed dark red. My sister shifted uncomfortably. Mom's tears spilled over, but I felt nothing watching them fall. No anger. No triumph. Just distance. An unbridgeable ocean of silence. "You called me the afterthought," I said quietly. "You built a life around cutting me out of it. You laughed while doing it." I stepped back, hand on the door. "And now you're here because you thought I'd forgotten?" Their faces collapsed inward, a mix of rage, regret, and disbelief. "Please," Mom whispered, reaching out. "Please." I looked at her hand, the same hand that had once smoothed my hair when I was a boy. The same hand that had waved me off from the porch of the cabin without a second thought. I shook my head. "You made your choice," I said. "And I made mine." I closed the door. Firm. Final. No slamming. No drama. Just a click of the lock sliding into place, soft, inevitable. I stood there for a long moment, forehead resting against the door. Outside, their voices rose, pleading, cursing, bargaining, and then faded. Footsteps retreating down the hall. I waited until silence reclaimed the hallway before stepping away. In the kitchen, my tea had gone cold. I dumped it into the sink, washed the mug, and put it back in the cabinet. Simple. Ordinary. Free. That night, as rain rattled the windows, I slept with my phone off, my mind clear for the first time in years. No guilt. No second guessing. Just the steady, quiet knowledge. They didn't break me. They freed me. They never came back after that day. No more letters. No more calls. No more attempts at guilt-tripping or pretending to mend what they had willfully torn apart. It was as if, when I closed that door, I closed a whole chapter of my life, and they for once had the sense to stay on the other side. I heard rumors, of course. A friend of a friend told me my father's business folded completely 6 months later. Their house, the one they used to brag about, was sold off in a quiet, desperate deal. My sister moved 2 states away, trying to outrun the fallout. They scattered like ashes on the wind. And me? I thrived. Without the weight of their expectations, their judgments, their constant reminders that I would never quite measure up, I was lighter. Faster. Sharper. I opened a small business of my own, nothing flashy. Just a simple shop doing honest work, something tangible I could build with my own 2 hands. It flourished. The funny thing was, without them whispering in my ear about my limitations, I realized they had never seen me clearly at all. I wasn't weak. I wasn't lesser. I was simply different. And different is dangerous to people who fear change. I reconnected with old friends they had sneered at. Took weekend trips to places they would have mocked as a wasted gas. Decorated my apartment exactly how I wanted, messy, colorful, alive, without a single voice telling me it was too much. Every now and then, a familiar name would pop up on social media. A suggested friend. A tagged photo. A memory. But I never clicked. Never opened the window. The past could shout all it wanted from the curb. I wasn't opening the door again. The cabin eventually fell into disrepair, abandoned like a sinking ship. Nature reclaimed it with a kind of ruthless grace, vines crawling over the porch, windows cracked and boarded up. In the end, it became exactly what it always had been for me. A place where I was never welcome. And now, a place no one could enjoy. Poetic, in a way. One rainy afternoon, I drove past it. Not on purpose, just a lazy Sunday drive through backroads in muscle memory. I saw it there, half sunk into the earth, hollow and broken. I pulled over and sat in my car, engine humming, watching the empty shell. No anger. No sadness. Just a calm, clean absence where once there had been a desperate, gnawing need. After a few minutes, I rolled down the window, letting the cool rain-scented breeze fill the car. Then, softly, just for myself, I whispered. Goodbye. Not to the cabin. Not even to them. To the part of me that had waited too long for an invitation that was never coming. I drove away without looking back. The road ahead was long, cracked, and winding. But it was mine. Every mile. Every turn. Every sunrise and midnight. Mine. And when I pulled into my driveway that evening, the porch light was already on, not waiting for anyone, not signaling anything. Just shining. Just there. I unlocked my door, stepped inside, and shut it gently behind me. Home. No ghosts. No afterthoughts. Just peace. At last.